Suppose there's an inventor, a crazy thinker, who imagines that he could fertilize crops using carbon dioxide. He knows that plants use carbon dioxide and water to make carbohydrates. All you would need is a wind detector to tell you when to apply the fertilizer, because you don't want it to blow away. You want to apply the CO2 to your crops when the wind is relatively calm. Even though CO2 is heavier than air and tends to hug the ground, you don't want the wind to carry it away. And he promoted his idea on Wall Street, hypothetically, and a bunch of venture capitalists got together with Wall Street bankers using good old Joe, the inventor, as the front man, and everybody's going to try to make money off of Joe's idea of fertilizing crops with CO2. However, they didn't count on Obama and the EPA declaring CO2 a pollutant and banning the use of CO2 as a fertilizer. So Joe's company, publicly traded company, which was given the stock symbol FRT for fertilizer, FRT, fell from $10 a share all the way to less than 2 cents. But at this point, the company, desperate to stay alive, executes a reverse split so that everybody with 10 shares now has 1 share. And the price miraculously goes up from 2 cents to 20 cents. But it continues to fall. That's what penny stocks sometimes do. They fall to where they're worth fractions of a penny, so that a $10,000 investment is now worth $2. In terms of pennies, 1 million pennies is now worth 200 pennies. When things get tremendously small, scientists like to use parts per million as a denomination. Instead of percent, which is parts per 100, they use parts per million. So the price of this stock, if measured in parts per million, is 200 parts per million. CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere, they say, was once 200 parts per million, very small, like FRT after it collapsed. They fail to point out that the previous record, the ancient record of CO2, was taken from Antarctica, where there is virtually no CO2 anyway, and they compare that to the recent exponential, alarming rise in CO2 taken from Hawaii, where there's relatively a lot of CO2 near the equator. Think about how the air circulates. Think about how CO2 is heavier than air. The only way CO2 can get to the North Pole or the South Pole is to rise up high into the atmosphere, drift toward the South Pole or the North Pole, settle to the ground, be covered up in snow. The air from the North Pole moves in a southerly direction, or if you take into account the circular currents that go around the equator, the air in the North Pole moves in a southeasterly direction, You have cold fronts moving down. Cold fronts move down from a polar region. Cold fronts don't move up. Ask a weatherman. And while you're at it, ask him why he hasn't noticed that a chart of CO2 taken from the poles, from Antarctica, for example, should not be compared with a chart of CO2 taken from Hawaii. But suppose the price of FRT, Joe's Fertilizer Corporation, jumped up suddenly at the closing moments of Friday's trading session, Friday, closing moments, in a very short space of time. It doubled from 200 parts per million to almost 400 parts per million. Would this justify your taking the risk of buying shares of FRT at 0.04 in hopes that it would keep on going up? What convinces you that it will keep on going up? Obama is wanting to make a huge investment in the expectation that CO2 will continue going up and going up fast. If you think about Joe's Fertilizer Corporation, you realize it went down fast to nothing, jumped up in the closing moments of Friday's session. Here it is weekend, and you're thinking about how to invest your money on Monday. A quick jump of 100% on Friday afternoon late doesn't convince me that the stock will go up astronomically and is worth taking a tremendous risk. But this is the way penny stocks are promoted. All hype, working on your emotions, trying to keep your ability to use logic stymied, to overwhelm your logic with emotions, hype, alarmism, extremism.